Welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 74 in The Discoverers. During the Middle Ages in Europe, it was common to date legal or official documents not by AD, but by the regnal year of the ruling king, pope, or bishop, which could add further complications. Since King John happened to come to the throne on Ascension Day, the 40th day after the resurrection, that is, after Easter, which was a movable feast, he began each of his regnal years on that festival day, which varied from year to year. Therefore, some of his regnal years were shorter and some longer than our calendar year. King Henry V came to the throne on March 21st, 1413, with the result, when the new year still began on March 25th, that each of his regnal years included parts of 2 AD years. The modern practice of beginning the new year with January 1st marks a return to pagan practice, for that was when the Roman year began, which explains, of course, why the Church opposed observance of that day. But from the increasing use of almanacs that made their calculations from January 1st and the widespread study of Roman law, January the 1st became the general date mark in Europe by the end of the 16th century. When Pope Gregory XIII produced his reform of the calendar in 1582, he too gave in to the pagan custom. His new style reckoning created some new complications for the modern historian. Roman Catholic countries soon adopted the sensible Gregorian reforms, but Protestants and the Eastern Orthodox Christians would not follow any pope's rule. During nearly 2 centuries, the British suffered inconvenience rather than live by a papistical calendar, for seasons had long since lost phase with the months. Finally, in 1751, the free-thinking Philip Dormer Stanhope, 4th Earl of Chesterfield, 1694 to 1773, famous for his letters to his son, introduced a bill in Parliament to adopt the new style, no longer the Gregorian calendar. By this act, the beginning of the year was moved back from March 25th to January the 1st, and the day following December 31st, 1751, instead of being January 1st, 1751, became January 1st, 1752. To correct the error accumulated by the old Julian calendar, the day after September 2nd, 1752, was to be called September 14th. For historians, all this left a legacy of confusion. After 1582, when Old Style was competing with New Style, the British colonies in America generally followed the unreformed British practice of dating, with attendant ambiguities. It took a communist revolution to persuade the Russians to abandon the Julian calendar, which they finally did in 1919. In Japan, Emperor Meiji, as part of his program of westernization, on January the 1st, 1873, finally adopted the Gregorian calendar to be used alongside the old system of rain years. In China, a complicated system combined rain year titles with the lunar year until the Republic was founded in 1911. At long last, the solar year was adopted, but dates were still reckoned from the founding of the Republic. Only in 1949 did the Chinese government go New Style with the Gregorian calendar. A common time denominator for the world's events would make it easier to define the latitudes of history and so discover which events were happening in different places at the same time, and then, too, which of the world's events came before or after others. During most of human history, even in Western Christendom, as we have seen, there was no uniform scheme. In fact, no scheme at all for dating events in one place in relation to events in another place. It is hard for us to imagine how insular and fragmentary was the past before scholars around the world established worldwide lines of contemporaneity. Orthodox Christians, spotlighting the events of the Bible, left all the rest of the world in outer darkness. to bring together the events of the Jews, Persians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans into a single chronology required superhuman erudition and a willingness to ask embarrassing questions. One of the first to try was the same ambitious cartographer Gerardus Mercator, 1512 to 1594, who found a way to depict the spherical Earth on a flat surface for the convenience of world-farers on the sea. He also saw the need for a universal chronology to give people their bearings as they explored all past time. In 450 folio pages he produced an ingenious chronology, from the beginning of the world up to the year 1568, done from eclipses and astronomical observations. Events among the Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans were synchronized by the contemporary references to solar and lunar eclipses. This was only the first part of Mercator's grand, unfulfilled plan to depict the whole world since the creation in both spatial and temporal dimensions. In the age of Copernicus, it is not surprising that others too used the new astronomy to illuminate history. The most famous and the most successful of them was the phenomenal French scholar Joseph Justus Scaliger, 1540 to 1609, who was revered as a prodigy and reputed to be, next to Aristotle, the most learned man of all times. According to his admirers, he had, quote, learned Homer complete in 21 days, end of quote. Studying in Paris during the frightful massacre of Protestants on St. Bartholomew's Day, 1572, quote, he sat so intent upon his Hebrew, a fellow scholar reported, that for some time he heard neither the clash of arms, nor the groans of children, nor the wailing of women, nor the shouting of men. Allured by the marvelous sweetness of these languages, while continually, like a fire, his ardor for learning grew, he acquired in succession Chaldean, Arabic, Phoenician, Ethiopic, Persian, and especially Syriac, end of quote. Phoenix of Europe, quote unquote, bottomless pit of erudition, quote unquote, and, quote, light of the world, end of quote, Scaliger drew on philology, mathematics, astronomy, and numismatics to make his correct system of chronology, which finally brought together the events of all known antiquity into a single series. While Pope Gregory was proclaiming his reform of the current calendar, Scaliger too was using Copernican astronomy to coordinate the numerous ancient calendars. Of course, Scaliger drew fire from all the faithful who believed that sacred history should remain esoteric. With this new science of chronology, it became possible for the first time to bring together into a coherent narrative the whole European past. And here I will conclude part 2 of chapter 74.